Hey everybody, it's Ken here from TreatWorks with a new episode today where we're going to actually bring on a guest, and I have with me Iram from MAV. Iram and I go back a few years. We worked together as a joint project when he was at Heinz, and we were one of the brands that Heinz was representing, and we've stayed in touch. And part of that is really what kind of leads into some of the conversation that we're going to have today is the importance of relationships in selling. And so Iram, I'd love to kind of pass over to you, and if you want to kind of say a couple words to get started, and we'll kick things off.
Awesome. No, thanks. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me, Ken, to have this conversation. I was thinking before we started talking about when I started this company, when I started MAV, you're actually one of the first people I reached out to and had a pop with on a patio a couple summers ago. Feels like forever ago these days, but and why I was thinking about that, it's like you build relationships and you value relationships, not for any immediacy, right? It's not about uh, who, what, how things matter today. It's about how am I part of something that matters, and that comes with being part of somebody else's life. And I really appreciate the fact that, when I was starting this out and like I was like, man, I'm scared. Like I'm doing this thing and I'm scared, and I know you're doing this thing, and I just need to hear somebody else say that that's okay. you know
Oh
like
yeah,
I just need to hear that, and to have the trust and confidence and ability to talk to a dude I've known for 15 years but talk to once every 5 years after we were out of that old mix.
yeah,
That's it's an interesting thing, right?
and definitely. I mean, again, as you said, we both had worked the corporate world. We had worked in larger corporations, and then kind of both went out on our own to do our own thing. And it was nice to connect and go, okay, are we crazy for doing this, and how is it going to work? And to your point, yeah, relationships are truly around what can you provide? And it wasn't a matter of, hey, well, Iram can't help me on something now. It's let's have that conversation and see where this goes, and how can we through connections, through next steps, through just time, be able to build that platform of our networks to keep open. I think again, when I was in job hunt mode, it was really important for me to connect as often as possible with as many people as possible to see where the opportunities are. And even more so now, kind of running a consulting business, doing things a little bit more entrepreneurially is really around how important it is to have those relationships, maintain those relationships, and even the future, how do you build additional or new ones, right? So kind of that was great.
Well, you're doing this video series now. I what 100 episodes,
I think it was about
like
105.
105 episodes, and you're doing this video series. It's about adding value, and offering your voice out to the world, and that's the establishment of relationships. Like we all have these really tight, important personal relationships that are like my wife, my kids, my friends who've been my buddies since high school, or talk about really dumb stuff all the time, whatever. Like those relationships, they're really deep seated, and they're in your heart, and that is a type of relationship that is super super important. The bulk of our relationships, if we're caring people, are about those relationships with people who hopefully we have something that we're trying to help them with, and that we're trying to be part of and to contribute to. And you and I, we talk business, and we talk about like the things we do, and we both work in this sort of the CPG space. You and Pat and me in a variety of categories. Um, when we're engaging with our retail partners, what we're trying to do is bring value to them. What we're trying to do is say, hey, if you're talking to me today, it's not because I want your time. It's because I'm going to make you and your business and your personal motivations in terms of how you navigate things with your boss or the VP of whatever, or supply chain, or whatever it is. I'm going to bring value to that. And I bring this up in this way and sort of try to, there's that commonality of this idea of a relationship, which is super important. But a lot of the time when I wind up talking to people about relationships in a business context, it's really about how am I actually caring for what the person on the other side of the table is motivated to achieve and is motivated to do. And if I'm showing up with the intention of talking about what I'm motivated to achieve and what I'm motivated to get, I'm not helping, and they care less, a
Yeah.
lot less.
Well,
So
definitely. And I think that's the challenge, that most often you're seeing people want to sell what's on their price list. They want to carry their stuff in. They bring their baggage, but the guy
they
across
carry
the
their
table
bag.
doesn't care about your baggage. They have their own. They have their P&L they have to worry about. They have their own issues or concerns and motivations. And I think that's where so often the conflict arises. And I call it conflict, but I think it's the discrepancy or the challenges because they're coming at it from completely different perspectives. I want to sell you something, but you don't want to be sold. You want to buy a solution. If I'm not providing you a solution, then we're at odds and we'll just never move forward. And I think that's the challenge that the sales force, globally faces is that disparity between wants and needs and the buyer and the seller.
I mean, what a global summary of the topic, but I mean, it's funny. Like a lot of people doing doing what I do, my company, we're a sales brokerage, so we sell other people's stuff, right? And a lot of people out there talk about relationships and the people they know, and it's funny. Like I'm Canada based. I know a lot of people in the industry or whatever. The turnover is crazy, you know. And the reality is that as much as I have very nice personal relationships with some of the people who I've called on over the years, and they like me and they, talk to me about personal stuff or whatever, when we're in a business context, the person I'm talking to, they want to know that I care about their business context. Like they want to know that the reason I showed up and I'm having a conversation with them about one of the brands that I'm representing, or that one of the people on my team is having a conversation with them about one of the brands that we're representing, is because we care about their P&L. And I love your comment on that about the P&L. And there's obviously a whole slew of other things that can be a focus area and are important to be aware of and engage in as you have these selling conversations as a brand to a retailer, as one of both yours and my primary relationships.
Yep.
There's a whole slew of things to care about, but we have the same mutual motivation, brands and retailers, which is that sales is the number one lever for all elements of the P&L. So if you can show up as a solution for growing sales and demonstrate an understanding of how your sales impact, your brand sales impact their category P&L, their retailer P&L, whatever it is that those details are, and bring value in that way, that's a relationship. That is a meaningful, deep, important relationship because you're bringing value in every conversation that you show that you care about those things. And so that's how I think about it a lot when I think about how am I navigating these topics that I work on and I'm trying to help people with. I guess it's the same thing I said when I first started. Is like, what does the person on the other side of that table, what is it they're thinking about? And if my brand isn't a contributor to what they're thinking about, if I'm not showing up thinking about how my brand is a contributor to what they're thinking about, I'm not going to win in that retailer. I might get through the door, maybe.
And so if we think of, what the current pandemic is thrown at us, right, on both sides of the desk, right? What do brands or what do you as an agency or kind of a sales group, what do you need to know or think about when trying to recalibrate as a result of COVID-19? Like how have you had to change that?
It's super intense, but what I actually think about a lot when it comes to COVID and the impact it's having on business is it's really just an intensifier of things that already mattered, right? So it's about being more clear-minded, more tight in your messaging, simpler in your communication, more empathetic. And by that, I don't mean saying, I hope you're doing okay. Like that was, and I always say, sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that, because I probably say, I hope you're doing okay, because I do care if you're doing okay, but like, hope you're keeping safe or whatever. It's like, guys, like we've been dealing with this for 5 months, and the person on the other end of that phone call or Zoom call or whatever, they're working on 47 things like this hour. So like, what value am I bringing, right? And so it to me, it's like the focus hasn't changed. It's just the intensity of that has changed. Ecom is like the most obvious example from a pure business perspective. If you didn't realize ecom was an important trend before COVID, you were asleep, right? You were asleep. And so did COVID make ecom important? No. Is the fact that ecom is probably 20% of CPG sales now versus in Canada for grocery sales, it was 3% before. It's probably over 10% at this point. Like, yeah, that's important. So as a brand, as a person working on brands, as a brand, as a person on my team, the first thing when the pandemic started, the first thing we talked about working with a huge number of independent beauty retailers, 50% of which didn't have an ecom. Maybe probably a lot more. Sorry, let me rephrase that. A lot more didn't have an ecom. About 50% of them now have an ecom. The first thing we did was we said, how can I help you get the assets that you need to support the brand we rep online, clear, smooth, fast in your process, so you don't have to do any work, because that's where you're going to make money. And by the way, it's also the only place I'm going to be selling. Like, so, I'm not such a nice guy for caring about that. I'm a business person who cares about your business and cares about contributing to the things you care about. And the more I care about simplifying the things you care about and executing against the things you care about in the way that you care about them and get it done in the way that you need it to get done, the greater opportunity I have to amplify that accelerant that we talked about briefly in our P&Ls, in our mutual P&Ls, which is sales. Can't survive without the sales. Can't make profit without sales.
No, exactly.
Can't the expense parts of your P&L without sales. Like,
yeah. And so what other things are you seeing from trends? I mean, obviously e-commerce, we know e-commerce is amplifying. And to your point, it was always important. I think what it did was highlighted those retailers that could pivot quickly, those retailers that had an infrastructure, those that needed to do some work. I think it also allowed them that time to sit back, look at, adjust their content, make it a little bit stronger. But what else are you seeing as kind of newer trends going on, both in the consumer package, so from the brand side as well as from the retailer side?
yeah. So maybe, probably three things to comment on. One I won't talk about, but in the background, I think one of the most important things we're seeing is just an amplification again of supply chain importance. Being good, clear, clean, and capable in supply chain is your number one driver of success, period. And that is even more obvious now. I'll leave that one aside. I think the other two things that I'm seeing that I think are really important and shifting probably, and not in every category necessarily, but in a lot, is the simplest example is sampling, but you could probably broaden that to describe it as experiencing brands within an environment. That's changed. That is changing. Man, when I go to the grocery store now, it is a bad experience. It sucks. I hate going to retail, and I love going. This is my world. Like, I've been working in this industry for 20 years. I love this stuff. I love walking into stores, seeing what's new, seeing the displayers, seeing like in Best Buy, the way things are put together. I love walking the grocery aisles and seeing, like, for me, one of the big things is adjacencies. People don't talk enough about adjacencies. What is your product next to? If you're a smaller brand, how can you leverage that? How can you make sure you're aware of it and engage with it? But anyway, so I love going into stores. I hate it right now. And so if you're a brand and you're trying to break through, and everybody, like, there's so much pressure and talk and stuff about D2C, and there's so much money floating towards D2C. The job, every brand's responsibility to consumers is to be available where they want, when they want. Not, I'm a D2C brand. I don't know what that means. Like the job is to figure out your P&L once you have sales, to figure out where you're allocating your resources to amplify the places and opportunities for consumers to purchase. Those opportunities for discovery right now in store are ugly. And so I'm a fan of Sampler. Like I spend a little bit of time supporting them. Supporting them isn't the right word. I shouldn't say that. Guest blog, whatever, that type of thing. That's all I'm doing. I'm not supporting them outside of that. Don't want to misrepresent that. I'm a big fan of that because I think that's part of how you break through, right? Is you figure out how to create that experience as a pet food company, pet treat company. You have to figure out how to break through in a way that you can't do, where part of your playbook may have been, to do the dog show or the, like, whatever it is, having like all those types of things. They don't exist in a meaningful way, and they won't, even when COVID is less impactful, they won't exist and be meaningful in the same way. And that probably brings me to what I would say is number two thing that's most important or is changing or whatever. The playbook. Too many people live and breathe and run by a playbook that is the old playbook. And even, by the way, pre-COVID, that was a problem. So, like if you're just running the playbook that everybody else is running, guess what? The big guys will win because they can run the playbook and they'll do it a little bit better than you because they have a little bit more resources, efficiency, capability within that playbook. That's not, the playbook doesn't exist. I mean, it exists, but like you got to figure out how to matter, how to matter to consumers, how to engage and understand the retailer P&L and your contribution and capability to be part of that. You got to figure out your individual differentiation points, and you need to be willing to take risks. And retailers who are going to serve, and lots of retailers are dying, retailers who are going to survive this crisis, they are changing their playbook. And so as a brand and a guy who talks to retailers about brands, the other most important thing for me is, what are the questions I'm asking? I'm not showing up saying, I know how to do exactly everything you need all the time and I'm perfect. That's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be, hey, what's the most important thing on your agenda? And then I got to be able to connect those dots and say, cool, this is how I can help. This is how I can contribute. And that playbook is changing.
And I think that's one of the most important aspects is, a good salesperson asks questions, because it's the responses, it's understanding. If I ask you a question, if I assume I know what you need, but I ask the question and I get a completely different answer, if I just ram through my original message, we're lost, right? That goes back to that whole understanding what's important. And the only way to understand is to ask the right type of question, and continually layer those questions to ensure that you can fully understand where they're going, what they want, what they're looking for, and then be able to pivot and provide a solution to that problem, or be able to say, hey, okay, well, maybe I don't have it, but let me look into that and get back to you. And the responsiveness, I think, does two things. One is it helps build that relationship, right? So tied back to the original conversation, right, is at least now you understand that we're working together, because I'm going to now do what I can to try to find you a solution. And maybe it won't be me as a little guy that can provide it, but I can look towards a way to help you solve your problem. And then what happens is they rely on you, they begin to trust you. And the next time they have a question, they may come to you first and realize that the big guys are going to ram through the things that they want to get through, but it may be the little guy who is responsive, who has built that relationship and that trust that allows them to solve those problems.
I love that circle back to the relationship topic, asking those questions, having the courage to acknowledge that you don't know, that you care about what they care about, to probe and understand, not to direct the conversation, right? That's one of the mistakes I see a lot in people who have been trained well enough to know to ask questions, but they're still running a playbook.
Yeah.
So they're not,
as you said, it kind of ties into that whole idea of that salesman, right? So many people have a negative connotation for salespeople because the salespeople have a script. They have to get from A to B to C, and I'm going to close no matter what. Even though the door's not open, I'm going to run through it. I've got to get through what needs to be done because this is what my script says, versus understanding that, hey, we're not ready yet. We're not there yet because I haven't solved your question. I haven't answered your question. And without answering the question, then we're never going to move forward. So.
It's really interesting, and you talked about the little guy and the big guy, and sometimes I think about it more in context of the people who are the brands, the people who are trying to help versus the ones who are trying to run through the door. Like, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Retailer says, sorry, that door is closed today, and Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson from X brand is like. I hope that came across on video. That was fun to do.
the hey Kool-Aid, right? Combusted through the door. No.
So the advantage that, and I think it's why there's always this opportunity for challenger brands, small brands, etc. The opportunity is actually for people to care about being part of the solution. And so when the bigger companies develop the ego, B, they actually do write playbooks. Here's my playbook. Here's what I do. It's like, oh, cool. That's good. I'm glad my retail can fit into your playbook. I don't think there's a lot of retailers saying that, So as a challenger, as a smaller brand, as a brand trying to break through, your ability to actually say, I care about what you care and deliver against that. So when you ask those probing questions and you take the risks of not knowing the answers and you take the risks of having to say, I don't know if I can help with that, but I do promise you this, I'm going to come back to you in the next 2 days with how I can help you with that if I can. Yeah. And when you come through, that's a relationship, right? Ken, that's what you were just talking about. That's a relationship.
And that builds that long-standing trust, right? And the trust is that element. I mean, that's what a brand is, right? A brand is a promise. And so when they can start to hear that you echo what your brand stands for, or they start to believe in you, they may know that, yeah, maybe you're not going to be able to solve all the issues, but you can solve many of them, and you can deliver to the bottom line in ways that others can't, because you can deliver. You've solved either a supply chain problem where you're providing a profitability boost, or something, a differentiator down the road that just makes them different from, because the retailers are all competing against the same things, right? As much as we think that the brands have, the big behemoths, well, the retailers have the same thing. If you're in the independent world, you're worried about the big guys and the mega stores, or you're worried about your channel shifts of what's going on with e-commerce and everything else, right? So
the big guys are
the same problems.
The big guys are scared too, right? You're talking to any big guy, they're scared of Amazon. You're talking to any food retailer, they're scared of Amazon. They're scared of the transition to e-com and their lack of ability to make as much profitability because last mile delivery is so expensive. They're scared that there's other guys come in. I've been talking about Aldi's coming to Canada for forever. There's constant pressure on everybody out there. There is no comfort in this industry. It is constantly changing, and so again, your job when you show up is to be contributing to that, to be helping with that, solving that, being part of the conversation that says, I am now a little bit more confident and comfortable that the next step in my plan is better.
Fantastic. I appreciate your time. We're running up towards the end, but is there any last comments or anything you want to say? And then we'll look at maybe hopefully making this a recurring situation so that we can keep connecting and providing more content out.
I love it, man. No, I had fun doing this. I enjoy our conversations. I always find it easy to navigate the dialogue. I hope the audience did as well. So thanks for giving me some time and spending time with me. So
no problem. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll talk later.
Take care.
All right. Bye. All right. Thanks, everybody. TreatWorks for watching. We will come back with another episode later on this week. Actually, I have another one tomorrow, and we'll see about making this a little more recurring with Iram and others coming back on a more regular basis. Until next time, guys. Bye for now.